Maribel stepped down from the westbound train with 2 canvas bags, $8 sewn inside her skirt hem, and one rule left from 4 years of widowhood: do not look lost in public. The depot at Mercy Ridge was nearly empty. 1 baggage cart, 1 sleeping dog, 1 boy sweeping dust. He was only moving from one board to another, and above the ticket window the clock read 3:17. Her train had arrived at 3:10. The man who had promised to meet her was not there. She set both bags on the platform and looked at the town without moving her face. Mercy Ridge was a narrow place built along a wagon road in a habit of disappointment: a general store, a feed office, a livery stable with hay pushing out of the loft door, a church with a bell that had gone green at the rim. Beyond it, open country ran brown and flat under the October light. Mara had come by arrangement. That was the word she had used in her own mind because it was cleaner than the alternatives. 3 months earlier, a notice had appeared in a Methodist paper back in Cincinnati. Widower with working farm seeks capable woman for household management and accounts. 46 acres, 2 cows, hens, orchards, separate room, wages, or long arrangement if suitable. She had read it once, then twice. Then she had folded the paper into the pocket of her black coat and left it there for 12 days before she wrote back. Her husband had been dead 4 years. Fever had taken him in a boarding house room where the wallpaper peeled in strips, and after that Mara had learned what people meant when they said a woman was managing. They meant she was tired enough to sleep standing up. They meant she could divide a potato 3 ways and still call it supper. They meant she could smile at a creditor without giving him the satisfaction of seeing fear. So when the man at Mercy Ridge did not appear, she did not cry, did not turn around, did not ask the boy for help. She counted 7 minutes. Then she picked up her bags. She was halfway down the platform when she heard boots behind her, not hurried, not careless, coming with the confidence of a man who assumed the road would wait for him. "You from Ohio," he said. Mara kept walking 1 more step. A person who stops too quickly tells the world too much. Then she turned. He was tall, sun-darkened, 38 perhaps, though grief had put older lines at the corners of his mouth. His coat was brushed but worn flat at the elbows. His hands were clean enough for town and rough enough that town had not softened them. He looked at her dress, at the mended cuff of her glove, at the 2 canvas bags. She looked at his boots, the mud dried high on the leather, and the way his left sleeve had been stitched by a hand that knew how but had stopped caring how it looked. "I am," she said. He did not apologize. She noticed that. "Train came early," he said. Mara glanced at the clock above the ticket window, then back at him. "No," she said, "it did not." The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, not quite defeat. "No," he said, "it didn't." He reached for the heavier bag without asking. She let him take it. But she kept the smaller one, the one with her needle roll, her letters, and the money sewn below the lining. He did not comment on the weight. He adjusted his grip and started toward the livery. Mara walked beside him. Not behind, beside. He did not seem to know what to do with that, so he did nothing which suited her. His name was Elias Bracken, he told her while he checked the harness on a dun mare with a white mark down her nose. He did not say much else. The wagon was sound. The mare was older but steady. The harness had 1 cracked trace he had wrapped properly, instead of pretending it would hold by hope. Mara watched him check every buckle. That mattered. A careless man could kill a good animal and call it bad luck. Elias Bracken was not careless. The farm was 2 hours out because the north road had washed soft after last week's rain. They left Mercy Ridge with the sun already leaning down, the wagon wheels cutting through dried ruts, the town falling away board by board until only prairie and fence line remained. For the first mile neither of them spoke. Mara looked at the country and let her eyes adjust to all that distance. In Cincinnati every sight ended at a wall. Here the land did not end. It only thinned toward the horizon, and she felt exposed inside that openness, as if even her thoughts had nowhere to hide. "How many in the house?" she asked. "Just me." She waited. There was no more. The notice said household. "It is a household," he said. It just quit sounding like one. That answer told her more than he likely meant to tell. The Bracken place came into view near dusk. And it was not the farm the notice had made in her mind. The house stood square, which was something. The roof line held. The chimney drew a thin line of smoke, but the porch sagged on one side. The east barn door hung open by a single hinge, and along the lower pasture nearly 40 rods of fence leaned like tired men at a funeral. The orchard had gone wild. The kitchen garden was a patch of dead stalks and burdock. Near the barn, 7 hens scratched in a yard that had been patched with 3 different kinds of wire. The best-kept thing on the place was the mare. Mara looked once at Elias. He did not look back. That, too, she noticed. Inside, the house smelled of cold ash and rooms that had not been properly lived in. The front room held a table, 3 chairs, and a stove blackened at the door. On the mantel sat a blue glass bottle with 1 dry sprig of lavender in it, brittle and gray at the edges. Someone had put it there because it mattered. No one had touched it because it hurt. Mara looked away first. Elias showed her the kitchen. Good pump, poor shelves, a sack of flour half full, a heel of salt pork, beans enough for 3 meals if stretched, coffee enough for 1 honest pot and 2 lies. He showed her the upstairs room where she would sleep, small, separate, a latch on the inside. He made sure she saw the latch. Mara did not thank him for that. She only nodded. Back in the kitchen, he stood with his hat in his hand. "Supper," he said, and then seemed to hear how it sounded. Mara unpinned her coat. "I will need to see what there is." He nodded and went outside. At the door, she said, "The lower fence." He stopped. "How long has it been down?" His back stayed toward her. "Since June." June was 4 months ago. The hens had stayed near the house because hens were fools with habits. The cows, wherever they were, had not. Mara said, "Then I will start supper." By full dark, beans simmered on the stove, cornbread cooled on a clean cloth, and Mara had learned 3 things. The stove drew well, the pump did not freeze easily, and the farm was not dead. It was worse than dead in one way. It was waiting. Elias came in after dark, washed at the basin without being asked, and sat with his back to the wall. His eyes went to the stove, then the bread, then Mara. 10 minutes, she said. He gave 1 nod. They ate plain beans and cornbread with a crust good enough to make the lack of butter less insulting. He took a second piece without comment. She pretended not to see it. Afterward, he carried his own plate to the basin. A man who expected service did not usually do that on the first night. A man who remembered service sometimes did. That night in the little upstairs room with the latch drawn, Mara lay awake listening to wind move around the house. It found every loose board. It tapped at the window. It made the empty rooms answer. She put 1 hand over the place where the money was sewn into her skirt, though the skirt was hanging over a chair. $8 was not safety, but it was the outline of a door. By morning, she had already decided not to use it unless she had to. Before dawn, Mara found the well, broke the skim of ice in the trough, and walked the yard with her shawl pinned tight. The ground told more truth than people. The west side of the barn had weathered badly. The hens needed a better run. The orchard could still be saved if pruned before deep winter. The lower field was holding water where it should have been shedding it. She found the cows behind the barn. 1 brown Jersey with a dull coat and patient eyes. 1 brindled heifer underfed but not ruined. Their hay was dry enough at the top and damp below, which meant someone had tried and failed, not someone who had never cared. When Elias came in, she had coffee waiting near the table. He saw it. He did not touch it right away. Men can be suspicious of kindness when they have gone too long without any. Finally he sat, wrapped both hands around the cup, and drank. Mara kept her eyes on the skillet. "Your lower field does not drain," she said. "No, the barn roof leaks on the east corner. Yes, the heifer needs grain. The Jersey needs water broken twice a day if you expect milk back before spring." He lifted his eyes then. "She has been dry since August." Then August is when the problem started, not now. For the first time, he looked at her as if she had become a different kind of person in the room. Not a woman from an advertisement, not a hired pair of hands. A witness. After breakfast, she asked for the account book. Elias said there wasn't one. Mara stared at him. He looked away first. That afternoon, she found a child's school slate in a cupboard, a pencil worn nearly to the wood, and an old seed catalog with blank margins. She used the margins. By supper, she had a list: flour, lamp oil, salt, oats, roof nails, fence staples, wire, 1 hinge, lard if mercy existed. By the end of the list, she had also found the first danger, not the broken fence, not the leaking barn, paper. A county notice folded inside a Bible no one had opened in months. $12.75 due by the 1st of April. Back tax and fee. If unpaid, the lower pasture would be attached. She carried it to the table and put it down between them. Elias looked at the paper but did not pick it up. "I know," he said. "No," Mara said. "You have been standing near it. That is not the same as knowing." His jaw tightened. A lesser woman might have softened the sentence because a man looked wounded. Mara had softened too many sentences in her life and watched the truth die inside them. "You wrote 46 acres," she said. "You did not write that 12 of them can be taken before planting. I wrote what I had. You wrote what you wanted to still be true." The room went quiet. Outside, the wind pushed against the house and found the loose board at the porch again. Tap, tap, tap. Elias stood. For one breath, she thought he would shout. Men sometimes preferred anger because it required less courage than shame, but he only took his hat from the peg. "My girl is in Fairholt," he said. Mara said nothing. "My sister has kept her since May, said the house wasn't fit." She was right. He put the hat on and looked at the door instead of at Mara. "If I lose the lower pasture, I don't bring Ada home. That's what the paper means." Then he went out. Mara stayed at the table with the notice in front of her. There it was, the real shape of the place. Not a house needing a woman, not a farm needing tidying, a man alone, a child displaced, a field wet at the wrong time. A debt small enough to look almost harmless and large enough to break the back of everything. Mara touched the edge of the paper. $8 sewn into a hem could get her back to Cincinnati. If she left quickly, she could still call this arrangement a mistake, and no one in the world would blame her. That was the most dangerous kind of choice, the kind that was reasonable. She sat until the fire dropped low. Then she rose, took the seed catalog margin, and wrote the number $12.75 at the top. Under it she wrote what could be sold, what could be repaired, what could be planted, and what must not be touched. At the bottom of the page, after a long time, she wrote one sentence: "Give the water a way out." The next morning, Mara walked to Mercy Ridge with an empty flour sack over her arm and the tax notice folded flat in her pocket. The general store was warm enough to make her hands ache as they thawed. A woman behind the counter looked up and immediately knew more than she intended to show. "Mrs. Pike?" Mara said. The woman nodded. Mara placed 3 coins on the counter. "Salt, lamp oil, small packet of carrot seed if you have it. I need to ask about oats, but I do not intend to ask foolishly." Mrs. Pike looked at the coins, then at Mara. "Bracken account has room." "I am not the Bracken account." "No," Mrs. Pike said. "You are the woman trying not to become it too quickly." Mara almost smiled. Almost. While Mrs. Pike wrapped the salt, Mara read the notice board by the door. A teamster seeking winter work, a brown mare for sale, a church supper, and a small card written in a hand too neat to belong to grief. Tools for sale, estate of Henry Vale, spade, ditching shovel, crosscut saw, post mall, seed drill in need of repair. Mara read it twice. Then she asked where Mrs. Vale lived. By noon she was standing in a clean kitchen east of town, across from a widow with silver in her hair and hands that still looked married to labor. Mara explained plainly. She was at the Bracken place. The lower field held water. The tax was due before April. She had little money and no wish to insult anyone by pretending otherwise. Mrs. Vale listened without pity, which Mara appreciated more than kindness. Then the widow took her out to the shed. It smelled of oiled iron, dust, and cedar shavings. A ditching spade hung beside a post maul. A crosscut saw was wrapped in sacking. In the back stood an old hand seed drill with one wheel crooked, and the grain gate rusted at the pin. Mara crouched and turned the wheel. It caught. She turned it again. It moved. "The gate can be freed," she said. "The wheel needs a new cotter pin. The hopper leaks here, but not badly." Mrs. Vale watched her hands, not her face. "Henry said that drill was a stubborn thing. Most useful things are." The widow looked toward the yard. "He kept saying he would come mend the ditch on Bracken's lower field. Then the fever took him before he could make good on it." Mara stood. "I can pay something now." "No," Mrs. Vale said. Mara stiffened. "No charity. It isn't charity to put tools back into work. Then call it account." Mrs. Vale studied her for a long moment. "When the field pays," she said, "bring me what you know is fair." Mara swallowed once. "There are gifts that humiliate, and there are gifts that stand beside you and pick up the other handle. This was the second kind." "I will," Mara said. "I know." The liveryman lent her a handcart at half rate, without saying half rate. Mrs. Pike added a small twist of coffee to her parcel, and wrote it nowhere. A boy from the feed office helped her lash the seed drill down and pretended he only wanted to practice his knots. By the time Mara started back, the cart was heavy and the road was going soft at the edges. Halfway home, rain began. Cold rain, needling rain, the kind that does not fall so much as lean against you with bad intentions. By the time she saw the Bracken house, her gloves were soaked through and the handcart wheels were cutting mud. Elias was at the lower fence. Driving a new post into the wet ground, he saw the cart, then the seed drill, then her. For a moment he said nothing. Mara stopped near the barn. The Toole widow will expect payment after harvest. Elias looked toward the field. What harvest? She wiped rain from her cheek with the back of her wrist. The one we are about to make possible. They started with the water. That is what Mara insisted on, and for 2 days Elias argued with the quiet patience of a man who thought he was saving time by losing it. The fence needed fixing, the barn needed patching, the cows needed feed, the tax needed money. Mara listened to all of it and then pointed to the lower field where water stood silver in the furrows. You can mend every fence on this place, she said, but if that field stays wet, the seed rots under all your good intentions. He stared at the water. She let him. A person often had to look at the trouble long enough to admit it was trouble. On the third morning, Elias brought out the ditching spade without being asked. They cut the first channel from the low center toward the willow line. The ground fought them. Clay stuck to the spade. Water seeped into each cut before the cut was finished. Elias worked with his shoulders and back until his shirt clung to him under his coat. Mara worked beside him, slower but exact, clearing the channel lip so water would not collapse it behind them. After 20 feet, the water moved, not much, only a thin brown thread slipping toward lower ground, but it moved. That was the first victory. Not a loud one, not a victory anyone in town would have seen from a wagon road. A small movement of water in a ditch no wider than a boot sole. Mara stood with mud to her ankles and watched that thread go. Elias stood beside her. "You're smiling," he said. "No," she said. "You are. Then the mud has frozen my face wrong." He gave a sound that might once have been laughter before disuse made it rough. By February, the house changed by inches. A hinge on the barn door, a patched coop, the porch board reset. A ledger bought from Mrs. Pike on account, then paid for with 3 afternoons of mending shirts for men who would never know the stitches had kept a field from being lost. Mara entered every figure: roof nails 9 cents, oats $1.40, lamp oil 12 cents, eggs sold 22 cents. She wrote losses in black ink because red ink cost more. Ada came home in March. Elias brought her in a wagon after 2 days away, a small girl of 7 with dark hair cut uneven at the ends, one mitten missing, and the solemn expression of a child who had learned adults could change the shape of a life without warning. Mara saw the girl standing in the yard and understood immediately why the house had felt unfinished even when the stove was hot. Ada carried a cloth bundle and a tin horse with 3 legs. Elias set her down. He looked at Mara as if asking something he would not ask aloud. Mara knelt, though the mud soaked the hem of her dress. "I'm Mrs. Bell," she said. "Your room is warm, your cow is rude, your hens are worse." Ada looked at her, then at the hens. "Which one is rude? The brown one." "That's not a cow." "No," Mara said. "That is how rude she is." Ada considered this with the seriousness it deserved. Then she took Mara's hand. That evening Ada slept in the small room off the kitchen because she was not yet ready for upstairs, and Elias sat by the stove with his coffee untouched. Mara opened the ledger. "The April tax is not solved. I know. We can sell the brindled heifer." "No." The answer came too fast. Mara looked up. He looked ashamed again, but this time he held her gaze. She was Ada's mother's calf. There it was. The kind of fact no notice board ever included, because grief had no column and memory no market price. Mara turned the ledger back toward herself. "Then we do not sell her first." "First?" "I said what I said." He leaned back weary. "What else is there?" Mara tapped the pencil once against the page. "The orchard," he almost laughed. "The orchard is half wild. Half wild still leaves half useful." For the next week she pruned until her fingers blistered, and Elias hauled dead limbs to the burn pile. Ada gathered the straight twigs and tied them into bundles with old string. Mrs. Pike took early kindling in trade. The livery took 2 loads. It was not much money, but not much money arriving in time is different from enough money arriving too late. By the last week of March, they had $9.30 in a cloth pouch on the mantel, still short. Then the Jersey gave milk, only a little at first, a poor stream into a tin pail. But by the 3rd morning there was enough to carry to town, and Mrs. Pike bought it for the boarding table behind the store. The day before the tax was due, Mara counted the pouch again. $12.81, 6 cents over survival. She did not cheer. She sat down hard in the kitchen chair because her knees had taken leave of their office. Elias stood across from her looking at the coins. Ada asked if 6 cents made them rich. Mara said, terribly. Ada nodded as if she had suspected it. The tax was paid on the 1st of April in a county office that smelled of damp wool and old paper. The clerk counted twice, disappointed to find the money exact. Mara watched his fingers until the receipt was signed. Then she folded the paper and put it into the ledger, not the Bible, the ledger, where paper meant a thing was alive. Spring came all at once after that, as if the ground had been holding its breath and finally decided against dying. The lower field drained in 3 shallow channels, each one cut by hand and cursed into usefulness. The seed drill moved badly, but moved. Elias walked behind the mare. Mara checked the gate every 20 paces and cleared clogs with a hairpin. Ada sat on the fence with a blue jay feather and declared herself inspector of crows. They planted oats in a strip of rye where the soil held firmer. 46 acres was still 46 acres. $12 paid did not repair a roof, milk did not mend a fence, a child home did not erase the months she had been sent away. But the farm had crossed a line, not from poor to safe, from sinking to working. That is a different miracle, and a more honest one. By June, green ran across the lower field in straight, stubborn rows. The orchard leafed out thin but alive. The hens laid enough that Ada began naming the eggs until Mara told her it was unwise to become too attached to breakfast. At night, Mara and Elias sat at the kitchen table with the ledger between them. At first, he only watched. Then he began to point out things she had missed. A loose shoe on the mare, a neighbor who owed him for a half-day of hauling, a corner of the north field that would take buckwheat if they could spare the seed. The first time he wrote a number himself, his hand looked too large for the pencil. Mara said nothing about it. Praise can embarrass a person back into silence, so she only turned the page and made room. By late summer, people in Mercy Ridge had changed the way they spoke of the Bracken place. Not much. Country people do not like to be caught revising themselves. But Mrs. Pike began saying the lower field looked decent. The liveryman asked Elias whether the old seed drill might be lent after harvest. Mrs. Vale came once in a black bonnet and stood at the field's edge with her hands folded. Mara brought her the first payment in an envelope. Mrs. Vale did not open it. She looked over the green oats bending in the wind. Henry would have liked seeing that, she said. Mara stood beside her. Then I am glad he kept the tools oiled. The harvest did not make them rich. It did something better. It made the next decision possible. They paid Mrs. Vale the first portion. They bought hay before the price rose. They set aside seed. They put $3 against the store account. Elias bought Ada a slate with an uncracked frame. Mara bought nothing for herself except a thimble because the old one had worn through, and even that felt like extravagance. On the first cold evening of September, they sat in the kitchen while rain moved over the roof. Not through it. Over it, that was new. Ada had fallen asleep on the bench with the blue jay feather tucked behind her ear. The ledger lay open near the lamp. Elias had written the final harvest figure twice because the first time he did not trust his own hand. Mara looked at the page. For the first time since she had arrived, the numbers did not look like a wall. They looked like a gate. Elias leaned back and the chair creaked. I thought you came here because you had nowhere else. Mara kept her eyes on the ledger. I did. He was quiet. Then she closed the book. But nowhere else is not the same as nothing to bring. The rain softened. The stove ticked as the fire settled. Outside, beyond the dark window, the lower field took the water and let it pass through the channels they had cut by hand. Mara looked toward the glass and saw faintly the reflection of the room. A man who had stopped apologizing because shame had worn out the words. A child sleeping because the house had finally become a place sleep could trust. A woman with $8 still sewn into an old hem because she had not needed the door after all. The farm had not been saved by luck. It had not been saved by a notice in a paper, or a promise made at a depot, or a man pretending the train had come early. It had been saved the way water moves through hard ground, cut by cut, hand by hand, until the thing that was drowning finally found a way through.